episode of Tony Kent Writes and Cross-Examines. I almost always start these recordings by moaning about the title Cross-Examines, and today there will definitely be no cross-examination, because today we're talking to somebody who has spent many years of his life teaching karate, and cross-examination generally pisses people off, and I don't want to piss this man off. So today we are speaking to Robert Scragg. Robert, as you'll see from the bottom of the page, is the author of the Porter Styles series of books, 3 so far, Newcastle Noir / police procedural novels, which are obviously set in Newcastle, beginning with What Falls Between the Cracks, followed up by the excellent Nothing Else Remains, and in January this year, January 2020, joined by All That Is Buried. Robert, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Tony. I'm good. I'm wondering with that intro if that's going to spark the whole debate again about boxing versus martial arts. And
we'll stay away from that. Boxing works in a boxing ring. Martial arts works in an octagon. That's debate over. I can see behind your head, though. I can see what someone you've already identified for me as being Holyfield putting Tyson down in the 6th, I think, in 1996.
It is. Yep. Perfectly captured. Just as he's on his way down.
Yep. Well, I remember that fight very well. I remember, I've told you before we started recording, I won a lot of money on that fight because I was at university at the time. I was in halls of residence in my first year. And for some reason, a lot of people seem to have, I've discovered, I'm sure you feel the same way because we've interacted on this subject on Twitter. People seem to have very, very firmly, passionately and aggressively held opinions on boxing, even when they're people who know absolutely nothing about boxing. And I always feel it's sort of, we live in a world now where everyone's opinion is worth the same as everyone else's. And my opinion is worth as much as the next man, even if my opinion is based on 5 minutes of YouTube and the next man is Angelo Dundee. It's crazy. So when that fight happened in '96, I think I was I think literally everybody apart from me bet on Tyson in my halls of residence, and I ended up being the wealthiest student for about, as long as it took me to get to the bar.
Did he get the rounding?
Yeah, exactly. When you get the rounding, but a pound a pint, you can do pretty well.
Yeah.
So yes, moving away swiftly from.
We could do the whole 50 minutes on boxing.
I know, the boxing obsession. I've got Rob Parker later there as well, and he's even worse than we are. Let's talk about the Styles, Porter and Styles books. 3 books in. How do you feel that's going? How are you enjoying it?
Very much so, enough that I'm currently just started number 4. I think the thing that I've enjoyed the most is not just some of the reviews that have come in and said this, but the conversations I've had at events and virtual events and stuff like that, where people come in and ask questions about the characters and they want to know about what's happening with the characters next. So it's not just about the books, and that for me, that's the bit to try and achieve with the series is they've got to care about them to continue to invest in the series. Well, I've noticed some of my favourite reviews are definitely along the lines of, the Porter and Styles dynamic works really well. We love how they they interact with each other and all that kind of stuff. So that really meant a lot for me.
Well, I've noticed that. I was about to say with because I've looked through some of the Amazon reviews and things like that, I've read What Falls Between the Cracks and also Nothing Else Remains. I haven't read All That's Buried yet, but having read the first 2, I just remind myself about them. I went into Amazon. And you're absolutely right. The interaction, the reviews you get, they're very, very focused on the characters, which is a massive compliment, isn't it? It is,
definitely. I mean, some of the writers that I've read for a long time that kind of inspired me to write, that's how I feel and felt about their books. And that's, while I didn't have a kind of a preconceived idea of what I wanted to write when I first started, that was the kind of the feel I wanted for it. So to hear people that I'm not related to and have no vested interest in just telling me, oh, that's really good, say those kind of things, that's what really kind of made it hit home and thought actually, I might be onto something here.
Well, that's a key thing, isn't it? It's a real key thing to actually have people who are independent and not your loved ones stepping in and saying, this is really good. I mean, speaking of which, you took an interesting route, didn't you, to getting published, in the sense that you kind of effectively went before a panel of people that weren't your loved ones, and they sang the praises of the books. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so for those of you who've not been to Harrogate, to the Theakston's Crime Festival every year, they do a pre-festival day called Creative Thursday. And it was another local author up here, Maury Hannah, who really recommended that I went. She'd been to one previously, so I went down, and it's a full day of structured workshops ran by authors whose books I was reading at the time. So what a great opportunity to hear it from the horse's mouth of this is how, this is kind of how you can go about getting published. And then as part of that, they have this Dragon's Pen session at the end, which is a names out of a hat. Get up and you literally have 2 minutes. It's more pressure than the countdown clock ticking around. And I got up and read out the first chapter of What Falls Between the Cracks, which I think is about 2 pages long, rather than talk about the book. And I managed to get 4 yeses, which got me 4 business cards from 2 agents and 2 publishers. And that got them committed to read the first 3 chapters. And of them, 2 then came back and read the full book. And I got some really, really good feedback from them. I didn't ultimately sign with any of them.
Right.
But I incorporated that feedback into the next round of submission I did, which within 8 weeks after that got me signed with my agent.
I mean, that's a fantastic story, isn't it? To see how it can really work, because it's a hard industry to get into. We all know that, and we've all got stories of how we achieved it, and it's always nice to hear somebody having a story like that, where you've actually gone along to what is a really, really welcoming community, and had the help from the community, and then you've gone forward. And I've said it below. I've written you're impressively prolific. You're actually frighteningly prolific. You seem to fire out books. I think we were both published in the same year for our first book, and I know that you are well ahead of me in terms of what you're writing. In terms of where you are on which book is coming next.
Yeah, I tend to. I think as we talked about before, I would class myself as quite a lazy person, if I'm being brutally honest, and I need a deadline. If I don't have a deadline, I will just let things kind of tick over at a fairly slow pace. But as soon as I get a deadline, I got my contract out for book 4 a few days back, and I just started probably about a week before that. I think I'm up to about page 55-ish now, probably about 16,000 words. And I'm fairly hopeful that that'll come in ahead of schedule as well. And then the effort levels will drop off again after that until I get the next one.
Well, I mean, it's obviously a system that works for you. So you got Jake Porter, you got Nick Stiles. Where do they come from? Stiles, I think, if anything, is a bit more like you than Porter, isn't he?
Yeah, I got asked the question on a panel event last week, actually, on one of these virtual events. Which of your characters would you want to spend lockdown with, if you could only pick one?
Good question.
And I did actually go for Nick Stiles on the basis that I think he's more like me, I think, in terms of how he sees the world.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a crutch for Porter that Porter doesn't realise he's leaning on at times. And I think there's more layers to him than people kind of give him credit for. It's not all about the main character who's in the spotlight. Yeah. And I think Porter would be a very different man without him.
Well, I did think that when I was reading it, to be honest. Stiles for me is almost like your audience surrogate, but it's also almost like your author surrogate. There is, I felt, quite a lot of you in him, because there's absolutely none of you in Porter, is there?
I like that way of looking at actually an author surrogate. I like that.
So tell us a little about Jake Porter. Given that he's really the main man. Where did he come from?
He is, yeah. So I actually, different people have different views on this. I came up with the idea before the characters, and then developed characters that I needed to drive that situation forward. And for me, having read a lot of crime fiction before I wrote my own, there's certain tropes that appear in a lot of them, and I wanted to try and make them a little bit different to what I saw as the norm at the time, which was alcoholic, 3 times divorced, all this baggage, and kind of a maverick lone detective who rails against the system.
It's becoming cliched, isn't it?
It is. So I tried to make him just someone a bit more relatable. So he lost his, if I'm timeline wise talking from the first book, he lost his wife in a hit and run accident about 18 months before that started. Work is his life at the moment, and he's got a very small circle of trust around him, which includes Nick Stiles and his mum and dad and his sister. And he's basically a good guy. He doesn't, at the start of the series, he doesn't quite know what the rest of his life is going to map out as, because he had this picture of what it was going to be with Holly, his wife, and that was, that was just smashed away in a one fell swoop in an accident. So he's still coming to terms with, who does that leave behind? Yeah. In terms of him as a character. So that's where it picks up from. And I try and develop him from a character arc point of view as much on the personal side as I do on the work side. Because again, it's all about making people relatable. Because you want your readers to look at him and think, well, is he going to end up with someone else? How does he get past?
Well, you want them invested, don't you? You
exactly.
Well, it's important to write standalone books. We both write series, and it's important to write books that can stand alone and be read without having to read the rest of the series. Otherwise, commercially making yourself unavailable. But it's also great, isn't it, when you see your character's life growing. I mean, there's always a soap opera element to it.
Yeah.
That people who read your stuff religiously or certainly in order, they will get that. It's not that the other guys are getting insufficient out of it. It's not the people who read them as a standalone who get insufficient enjoyment. But there are, I think, Easter eggs, I think, is the word they use in films, isn't it? It's like an Easter egg for the people who have followed your series. They get to see this development.
One of the best reactions I've had in recent months was actually, so I've still got a day job, as you know, was my boss at the time. She didn't tell me she was reading the first book until she'd finished it, in case she thought it was rubbish.
Good boss.
But then, but then she read the second, she read the third, and she came in after reading the third and said, "You can't leave it like that. Like what? So what's going to happen after that?" And at the time, I didn't have the contract for book 4, and I said, "Well, I could tell you, but it'd be no fun. The anticipation will make it worth the wait."
You can't admit that you don't know yet.
No, I did actually know. I had it all planned out already by that point. But yeah, it was just her reaction of like, you can't leave me hanging like that. How long for a year for the next one?
But that's exactly the reaction you want, isn't it? It's a bit awkward to get that reaction from your boss, who can then say, right, well, you're on nights now until this is done. But it's the reaction you want. You want people invested in that way.
Yeah, I did suggest if she was willing to give me a paid sabbatical, I could write it a lot quicker.
Didn't really hit home. See, I let when I have beta readers, and I write slightly differently to other people in the sense that I like my stuff to be read as I go. I don't like writing a full thing and then giving it to people. So I read mine to Victoria, my wife.
All right, okay.
And I also send it to my sister and to my friend Grant, they're all very different people, but they're all big fans of the genre. So I read it to Victoria to go, and I send it to my sister in sort of tranches of 100 pages, and to Grant in tranches of 100 pages. And I always know I'm on the right track when I get text messages from my sister. She'll finish 100 pages, and then the following day more book. And you say, just nothing more than that, just more book. You know, sorry, how fast do you think this process is? But it's what you want. It's the reaction you want, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So in terms of Porter and Styles, the 4th book's coming. Can I just ask? This is something I'm always interested in. The first book, What Falls Between the Cracks, that's about a child, Libby, who goes missing at a
No, that's the third one. That's all,
is it?
That's All That's Buried is about the child.
Well, I've misread something on your website then, because I'm trying to put 2 and 2 together. Anyway, in terms of What Falls Between the Cracks, you obviously had a long time to come up with that plot.
Yes.
But then you're on the conveyor belt, and as I've said, you are incredibly prolific, so, just shockingly from my point of view. What's the difference? How do you feel there's a difference between when you've had that long to come up with a plot and perfect it, and then you've got to get it out and get the next one out?
Well, see, I almost feel like I cheated without anyone realizing. So the first book that was published was What Falls Between the Cracks. I'd written a full manuscript before that with Porter and Styles, which at the time was called Faceless.
Yeah.
And that didn't get anywhere. I got a few agents interested, but no one ultimately took me on. Wrote the first one, got picked up by my agent. She came back and said, "All right, we've got you an offer of a 2-book deal on the basis it's a series. What other ideas have you got?" And I thought, well, I've already written another Porter and Styles book. So I gave them the exact same synopsis. And they said, "Yeah, we love it. We'll have that as well."
Fantastic. So effectively, it's 2 already.
In my naive mind, I thought, well, do you know what? I'll just have to change the timeline a little bit, tweak a few little bits in here and there. It'll, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And I opened up the original manuscript, and I got half a page down, and I was just shaking my head thinking, like, who wrote this absolute rubbish? And I thought, I just can't submit that. So I finished up having 2 Word documents open, one with the original manuscript, the other a blank page. Yeah. And I used this as my outline. And I wrote the whole thing again from scratch. So it was a faster process.
Yeah. But still not as fast as you expected.
But the idea was already there. The core of the story was already there. And it was more just, I guess, I think my writing has evolved a bit between the first one and that second one there. Yeah. So I kind of feel like I cheated a little bit with the third one. I don't know if you're the same. I constantly come up with ideas, or I'll see something that'll make me think, "Oh, that could work."
Well, I'm going to have to interrupt you because, as I always do, I've lost track of time. We have 10 seconds. I'm really, really sorry. So I'm going to have to say thank you very much for coming on and for talking about the books. Good luck with All That's Buried, and I will speak to you soon.
Yes, Tony. Thanks for having me on. Bye for now.
Oh.